I've been waiting a long time to speak with Paul Stonehill. He's a published author, researcher of Eurasian and Russian UFO, USO, and paranormal phenomenon. He's been on Ancient Aliens. He's interviewed by the History Channel. He's given lectures all over the world. And he's got some deep research starting at around 1991 that we don't see here in the West. His area of research is vast and deep, and he has actual documentation and people inside of Russia. He's got an amazing YouTube channel who covers weekly, daily events that happen on that side of the world that we don't here know. It was an amazing time to listen to Paul and gather all this information, and he's got an amazing YouTube channel. Don't forget about that. Go check that out. Thank you again. Been a huge fan. One of the things that shocks me about your work is that there's not more of you. You are like the guy, man. Like nobody else wants to get out and talk about ufology, especially from Russia or the Eastern Bloc, anywhere on that side of the world. And I know you've spoken about it a lot, and you've written 3 books and you've done some in-depth research into all of it. But what I never could find, and maybe I missed it, but like, how did you get into it? What made you go, oh crap, there's something to this, and I really want to spend like dedicated time to research all this?
Well, when I was a youngster in the Soviet Union, actually, I met somebody who was a military pilot in the Arctic branch of the Soviet Air Force, and actually, it was Red Army Air Force at the time, and
Right.
they encountered an unusual object over the Arctic. Description like we have UFOs today,
Yeah.
and they started, firing at it, but like they had like a Gatling gun
Right.
aboard, something like that. Nothing happened, but meaning to them.
Right. Yeah. Thank God.
But yeah, thank you. But also, I was very curious, and in the Soviet Union, we had a very interesting magazine called Technika Молодежи. It's like technology for the young people.
Okay.
And they were iconoclastic in many ways. They were publishing interviews with cosmonauts who would offer their opinions on the intelligent life in the universe. Also, they would cover mysteries of history, new inventions. Very brave magazine.
Right. And it had to have been sanctioned, right? That wasn't like an underground thing. That must have been like official, I would say, maybe.
Let me explain.
Okay.
The Soviet Union did not like UFOs too much because citizens would stare up in the sky and see military tests, which they were not supposed to.
Same in America.
At the same time, they had to deal with the threat of an object crossing Soviet borders without any repercussions. And they had foreign spies and vice versa. Of course, they were in the West. It was a complicated situation, but ufology, yes, it was underground, and at the same time, it was not in some circles. And also, there came a time when underground or independent ufologists were asked to join government program for UFO studies.
Wow.
I want to give you an example so
Yeah.
people understand it's not all black and white.
Right.
In the Soviet Union in 1967, a group of scientists, Felix Ziegel was one of them. He was a prominent Soviet ufologist, and military sympathizers from the Soviet military joined hands. They were working together in a facility called DOSAAF, meaning it was part of a governmental organization.
Okay.
They got access to television. There was a TV program, and they spoke, scientists and military, together to the Soviet population and asked that the citizens would send their observations to such and such address. It was like an explosion of a bomb. And for a month, they enjoyed relative freedom. Then it was quashed.
They were just overrun with reports then? Or did people just flood them with information?
Absolutely. Because first of all, Soviet people, quite many were quite educated. They wanted to know where to report their observations to.
Right.
So some would send to planetariums, observatories. Others would send to the KGB. Others would send to the Academy of Sciences. And just like in other countries, Soviet Academy of Sciences was, cowardly in many ways entity, and they didn't want to deal with it. They wanted to deny it, but not all. Some scientists were brave enough to do research.
That's amazing. And it was kind of sanctioned until it wasn't, or probably was always sanctioned, but then just not publicly, I'm assuming.
It was Soviet Union went through a lot of stages, and
Mhm.
the beautiful stage was under Gorbachev, especially towards the end.
Right.
What he was trying to do, I think, was magnificent, but hardline communists, prevented him from doing it.
Right.
But in 1989, Gorbachev took off chains from the subject of ufology.
Wow.
And I was kind of in all of it from the West. I was already in touch with people in the Soviet Union.
Hmm.
And you should see the flood of the information. All the gates were broken. And it wasn't tabloid junk like in later years.
Right.
Military people, Navy people, of course, cosmonauts, everybody started sharing information. And, they were curious about the West, but at the same time, they wanted to know what's going on in our country. And this was the period of glasnost,
Hmm.
freedom
Right.
of expression.
Right.
And I still have beautiful just publications from those times. And, I got in touch with the Soviet groups directly. I would say 1991 for sure.
Hmm.
I helped also Dr. Haynes from NASA, who is very much a proponent of ufology.
Hmm.
Uh, and he was, we worked together very well. And dozens of groups I had been in touch with, I pushed their information to be published and produced in the West so people would see. And I send them my Russian language articles about like Brazilian, American
Right.
ufology. So it was a very interesting period.
And it was very open at that time, right? I mean, there
Yes.
was people weren't scared to talk at that point. They were being very
Not
forthcoming.
only, you're right, not only people. The KGB released 124 pages of the UFO documents. They had I have in my books translation of the
Right.
cases, and it was very interesting. But also, I'd like your listeners to understand the KGB per se were not excited about having to deal with UFOs.
Right.
They had to defend the motherland, so to say. But seriously, military facilities, special objects, and also, like I said, population would send them UFO reports. They
Right.
had to collect them, but they were not the primary organizations for the collection of UFO materials.
Was there a government? I mean, it sounds like everybody had no idea. Pretty much like what it is from now in America and pretty much everywhere else in the world. Everybody calls somebody and it just disappears into a black hole. You have a lot of the MUFON organizations here, the public organizations that aren't government, and except for Arrow, that puppet show that they brought up now recently in America. But it seems like everybody just shoves things where they think it goes. And in Russia, was there a governing entity like something like the KGB or something that kind of
In
housed
the
it all?
Soviet Union, here's
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah.
In 1977, there was a very interesting case that scared Soviet government into action. It
Wow.
happened in the city of Petrozavodsk in Karelia, that's northwest Russia.
Hmm.
And because they were testing satellite, semi-secret satellite, and this caused the appearance of numerous UFOs, interference by a physical impact. They got scared into creating a special program, top secret academic / military UFO and USO research program.
Wow.
The correct name for it was Setka, meaning net. Some translated like grid, but I think net is better in English because they were trying to catch something.
Gotcha.
And the name changed to Galactica, the next 5 years because they had to have funding for it.
Mm.
It wasn't just, it wasn't like in the Stalin's times, people had to go through collective decision making.
Right.
Anyway, it was a magnificent program because all Soviet servicemen had to report what they had observed. In my books, I even show a special document that they had to fill out, special form.
Form, right.
Very interesting. And there were incredible cases. This program lasted from I would say 1978 through 1991 officially.
Right.
Then the Soviet Union ceased to exist, but it carried on for a while.
Okay.
Then we know something about 1996 being the final year. Then came, the Yeltsin years were crazy time, very interesting, heady times.
Right.
And then came Putin after that. And with him came a different way to study things like this. Um, the information collected, I have a tip of the iceberg in my books, in my lectures, in my videos. We don't know the full extent of what they had found out because such documents are kept in archives.
Mm-hmm.
There is no access at all to independent ufologists. But just from the cases, like I said, that I had been able to find and documents, incredible.
Wow.
And the hints of what we don't have is even more astonishing.
Really? Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. There was a case that we still don't know what it is. When I say we, I want to underline, I have worked with a number of Soviet and post-Soviet ufologists.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them have passed on.
Mm-hmm.
People like Vadim Chernobrov, Yuri Smirnov, and so forth. The best and the most knowledgeable remaining ufologist in Russia, relatively young, is Mikhail Gerstein. He's an author of many books. I mentioned him throughout my works. He's very, very knowledgeable. He's a field researcher, used to be. I don't know if he does it now.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of compared notes. And there is also a group very active in Ukraine,
Oh, okay.
which has a number of good databases Ukraine had acquired after the breakup of the Soviet Union.
Oh.
So, they have, and you can see in my videos
Mhm.
also, if you do search under Setka, Setka,
Yes.
you can see I posted some videos not long ago, which have the, like 1967 documents that Setka incorporated later and so forth, and later period. So, what I want to say, there was a case of the so-called Arkhangelsk. It's a city in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Dust. We don't know what the dust is, but it's so curious.
Hmm.
Something ominous. We just don't know what it is.
Right.
There's one case. I'm sorry. There's one case that I have uh, in my books and in my video, very interesting, called Monchegorsk object. Monchegorsk is a city also in northwestern Russia.
Mm-hmm.
In 1987, an object was left in the Leningrad region. I don't know if it was, you can say it left, it was found outside the gates of a military unit. It was a shuttle-like small object built for little stature people,
Mm-hmm.
small stature people. It was very interesting. It was delivered to a special facility in the Kola Peninsula. It became part of the Setka program.
Mm-hmm.
It was researched to an extent possible. They were not able to get in. Finally, they did. Investigators, they broke one piece off, which was, and
So it
there
was
was a,
sealed. It was just like a sealed.
it was sealed. It
Was
was
it an
sealed.
egg or what was the shape like? It was
No,
like.
shuttle-like.
Oh, okay.
There is a, when if let me say it now.
Yeah.
What I'm telling you, a lot of it you can find in my YouTube channel.
Right.
It's called Paranormal Research, Paul Stonehill.
Yep.
Monchegorsk object. You will see the drawing of this object. It's very clear. What was found inside, they said, was not built for human beings, but human-like beings. Okay,
Oh,
humanoid.
okay.
And they couldn't understand how the object was controlled. And there's a very cool description.
Wow.
Anyway, they studied it, investigators, for a while. A special group arrived from Leningrad, the Setka, top Setka investigators. The object was rolled out. And here, we don't know what happened. It might have been it either blew up and vaporized, or it disappeared.
Whoa.
It's still a very secretive case.
Wow. That's
This is
amazing.
one. The other one, you ask about Setka.
Yeah, Setka.
A lot of people know about this certain Voronezh case, 1989, children in the park. This is all very nice.
Mhm.
Interesting case. And I have been in touch with the investigators, Genrikh Silanov and others. But not far from Voronezh is a town called Borisoglepsk, where they had, and they still have something like it, Top Gun airfield testing ground.
Okay.
And local commanders begged Moscow to send them Setka specialists because UFOs would interfere with flights of the Soviet jets,
Wow.
and to the extent that some jets were lost.
Wow.
And there was a very interesting case when, there was a jet was downed,
Hmm.
and with it there was a landing of let's call it alien craft, and a figure, as I should put, a humanoid, was detected running or moving away from it. And I'll tell you, I'll describe the description of it floored me
Yeah.
because of what I had studied about Lake Baikal swimmers. It was identical, 9 feet tall, uh, shape, humanoid, dressed in silvery outfit,
Hmm.
going away. Now, the specialist, the Setka program specialist, he's still alive. His last name is Yermilov. He was the one that brought a lot of this information forth. This is not tabloid junk.
Right.
These people are scientists. And this is what I liked about Soviet research, because ever since beginning of the age of ufology, I would say about 1946 in the Soviet Union, we had scientists, hardline scientists, and not only, of course, other people helped, and military
Hmm.
people, studying it and trying to find out answers.
Was it Lake Baikal is amazing. I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute because that still has
Mhm.
it's just an amazing topic to me that most people I think in the West aren't even aware of. But this incident is I've heard about rumblings of throughout the years that uh, at one point the Soviet Union told their fighters to engage the UFOs to try to shoot them down, and I think that maybe this is one of the cases where it actually downed an actual fighter, right? Like a fighter jet, and hurt people, right? Is that's happened more than once? And so then the Soviet
More
Union?
than once. The
Yeah.
first case is very descriptive that I have, again, because of the scientist who was underground, stay down below on the ground.
Doing the research.
It
Yeah.
was in 1953, Siberia, limited access area. He was a former inmate of the Gulag, of the concentration camps,
Right.
who was banished, and he had to spend his exile in this area of Siberia.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, there was a huge mothership of a UFO flying over the territory, and it separated into smaller pieces.
Whoa.
And the biophysical impact of this mothership on humans was horrible. He really suffered. Now, what
Mm.
happened was that the local KGB, it was called differently at that time. They became scared. They didn't want to deal with this.
Hmm.
So they ordered him to stay and take measurements. And all he had was like a theodolite. He was geological, but he did take good notes until he passed out at the end because he couldn't take it anymore. The effect on his mind and psyche and everything. But he
Wow.
did excellent description. And what happened is that the Soviet Union commanders, they blinked.
Hmm.
This is the time when Stalin just died. Nobody knew who was really in control.
Right.
And here you have this threat. So they fired at it, and as a result, they lost 3 jets.
Wow.
So, but that's just one example. In
Right.
1960s, they had cases. Also, close to in the Iran-Iraq war,
Hmm.
they had a situation when a huge UFO disc-like object appeared over Soviet military installation. So they blinked and fired at it, and lost people. So the order came down. The Soviet armed forces, don't shoot at them. Don't,
Hmm.
don't bother them. They're not a they exist, but they're not a direct threat.
Right. Right. Which is interesting because that's kind of what happened here as well. I haven't heard, but I mean, I know interestingly, I think it was 1952 where the jets took off from Washington D.C. There was the flyover in Washington D.C. and the same thing happened that they couldn't keep up with it and they were told to fire, but they couldn't lock on or do anything. And you know, never don't engage because it's not a threat, which is interesting. And that's the reoccurring theme you hear from multiple people from all over the world. It's like, well, if they were a threat, they would be doing something to us now, but we've not seen them to be a threat to us. So, why engage them with this? So it's interesting to see that across the spectrums, that's how, everybody treated it. And, getting that information out. I mean, of course, over here in America, we think the same thing. Well, is it Russian? And I'm sure that, the Soviet Union thought it was American at some point as well, and we're pointing fingers at each other. But I also heard that there was a lot of, especially during Gorbachev, that there was a lot of working together behind closed doors between both of the countries to say, hey, we're dealing with the same thing you are. I think that's what I could be wrong, but I think that's kind of what the red emergency phone kind of was built around a little bit to say, hey, this isn't us. We're not trying to turn your nukes on or off. And, this is something else. And so I always heard that there was a backdoor kind of close working relationship between the two countries where in the front, we're, at war or Cold War. But this subject, we were together, right?
I'll give you some examples. First of all, we are dealing with phenomena that is not limited to the soil of this planet. We're also talking about oceans and seas and lakes,
right.
And of course the outer space, near space. So let me go by one, and I'll show you how they work together.
Perfect.
USOs, unidentified submersible objects. Our book, Philip Mentel's and mine, Russia's USO Secrets, made a lot of noise in 2016.
Yeah.
It's now in 6 languages, hoping for maybe Chinese, Japanese later translations. What I want to say is that we show in our chapters how the Soviet Union and NATO got together and discussed some of the objects that they chased on either side or both sides, and they thought, well, it's theirs. And Soviets said, no, it's NATO's. And then they found out it's not ours, it's not yours.
Right.
This is military people. But of course, as today, I have no doubts, before, yes, there is direct communications between Russia, United States, and China on such themes. And even joint program. And what is the best example of the joint destination than Phobos, the moonlet of Mars? This is a very interesting, most likely artificial body,
right,
that's been around Mars for a long time. And those in the know want to get there, from NASA, from Roscosmos and the Soviet Space Agency before. So in 1989, there was a joint, behind the scenes, joint project. It wasn't even mostly Soviet Union. It was American, it was West European, some East European countries, some independent countries, joined together to send 2 space probes towards Phobos to study it and to do tests of laser weapons and so forth. One spacecraft was lost on the way to the moonlet. The other one was destroyed outside the moonlet. I was given a photograph by late Marina Popovich back in 1991, showing me the subject. I had been in touch with Valery Burdakov, brilliant Russian missile and rocketry scientist who was not afraid to promote ufology and who raised hell when this Phobos incident happened, saying, why would we go to an inhabited space body?
Wow.
He knew a lot.
Wow.
How could this be done? Also, Dr. Haynes at that time and we purchased, I remember, a whole lot of Soviet magazines. And I went to each and every page, specialized magazines and newspapers. And what was said in those days when the spacecraft was destroyed, and the Soviet scientists described a small swarm of bodies around it. Of course, the huge object that is in the picture just before, photographed before the space probe was destroyed. And theories that maybe the aliens, kidnapped it or abducted it, took it away. Scientists talking like that.
Right.
This is an example of a joint program. JPL was in it, I'm sure, every second. They knew what was happening in Moscow. So when the need comes, they all work together.
Right.
There's
Right.
another brief example. 2011, another mission was about to go to Phobos, Chinese Russian one.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't make it out from the atmosphere of our planet. Something happened. It was destroyed, but it shows you that they work together. They really want to get there. It's like they know something is there. They
Right.
want to touch it. They want to study it. They want to maybe isolate it. It's like on this planet, Mariana Trench,
Mm-hmm.
not far from Guam. This is a place where Americans and the Soviets, in the worst days of Cold War, worked together on each other's ships just to get to study what's going on there. Today, China is very much involved in Mariana Trench. Russia, to the extent possible, of course, United States is right there.
Yeah. It's amazing how that happens, right? I mean, and then, space, the photo I've seen of Phobos, it's like Phobos 1 and Phobos 2, I think is amazing. Is you can actually, isn't one of the pictures where you can see like a beam, or is it just like a straight line heading right at it or something like that? That's basically the last photo. It was like one of the only photos.
Huge object. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge object that was massive. And then, if I'm not mistaken, was Phobos one of the moons it's kind of like potato shaped, it's odd shaped, and does it actually have an obelisk on it? Is that the one that?
That's what Buzz Aldrin says, and some people in Russia confirm.
Yes.
There is Deimos and there is Phobos.
Deimos and Phobos, right?
And there is a Library of Alexandria, and I'll tell you why I say it. I have a video that I made about 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You see, in the Soviet Armenia,
mm-hmm.
they had a document that they had that had been in their archives for a long time, and we found out about it because a local KGB guy tried to steal it, and then he actually brought it back during World War II. It's a very romantic story, but what it is that it shows a map. It shows Mars with only one satellite, and
Whoa.
we believe this is the document that was brought to Armenia when the Alexandria Library was burning, so to say.
Whoa.
Some documents were saved, and there is confirmation from a Middle East, medieval Georgian from the country of Georgia, chronology writer, very interesting and scientist. So there was a period when there was only one satellite, and there is this map. This is just one of the riddles of the two satellites. Of course, if I'm not mistaken, who was it? Jonathan Swift, I believe, that wrote Gulliver's Travels.
Right.
Yeah, he had an excellent description of the two satellites. But we discovered them, modern science, back in 1877 only.
It's amazing how that works, isn't it?
It's just one example. I have other things in my research about other, and this by the way, we can talk later. But so that you know, so we can talk more about USOs, of course.
Right.
I'm glad I brought up, this subject. Philip and we brought it up. It became fashionable now. People talk about it,
right,
and write books. But we were not the only ones. There were other research. But the Soviet Union, Russia, Russian Empire, post-Soviet Union, yeah, I've been working on it for a long time. Philip helped me because he was known in the Soviet Union also as an interesting, British ufologist.
Right.
We collected tons of information, and they even translated it into Russian.
Wow.
And it's published in Russia too. I know that one of my articles about the Swedish events, I think back of 1970s, is published on the site of the Russian Navy. So they know about our research.
Wow.
This book was very well accepted in Russia, but not only Russia. And it shows you the extent of encounters that their navies had. And sometimes the confusion they experienced and fear and anxiety. Imagine you are a captain of I don't know if this is the right word, commander of a submarine, and on spy missions in the waters of United States or NATO, and all of a sudden you see these huge objects enveloping you or trying to come to some contact with you, and this is not Americans.
Right.
as an example. But there were others. We have a whole chapter about, for example, British territory, British holdings in by Antarctica,
Oh, wow.
and the observations taken by Soviet submarine missions, definitely spy missions, but
Hmm.
able to take photos of UFOs. Because people say, why there are no photos? Well, we present photos and drawings they made, and documents, reports to the naval headquarters, memoirs of Navy commanders, newspaper articles, and telegrams as much as possible, because most people don't understand that we know more about outer space than we know about what's inside our oceans.
Isn't that amazing? And the Earth is like 70% water, right? So we
Mhm.
most of the Earth is covered in water, and we know less about it. And I always thought that was a misnomer. I always thought that was part of the propaganda that they pushed on everybody. Is like, we know more about space. I'm like, I mean, come on, do they? I mean, they probably know. I mean, think about the U.S. and think about like just private industry. Like Google has like the project that's supposed to be for the past 15 or 20 years mapping the entire ocean floor with their autonomous subs and things like that. And I know there's the stories of the Americans. We put sonar listening devices all over the seabed so we can tell, basically triangulate
Yeah.
sounds from coming all over. And there's really spooky sounds that they can't understand. I think there's one that's called the blip or something like that. That's a famous
Mhm.
sound that registered all over, and like nobody
Mhm.
knows what that is. But the big games of everybody in their spy subs and everything, and they kind of know where each other are at. But there's got to be more down there than you know we can possibly even imagine. And the USO angle is highly, well, it was highly overlooked. But then I was looking at correlative research on UFO sightings just in America alone, and then kind of went out a little bit. And the majority of them are placed by bodies of water, not only oceans but lakes, large bodies of
We'll
water.
get into lakes.
Yeah,
But I want to let you know that also in the book, and why I want to see a Japanese and maybe Chinese
yeah,
translations is because of the attention we had paid to the Far East, because a lot of things are taking place in the Russian Far East, Kamchatka, Chukotka, especially Coral Islands,
yeah.
little research territory. But in a way, I think the Americans knew what they needed to know even during World War II, when the Coral Islands became, again, Russian territory, Soviet territory, and the encounters, the objects, incredible objects that they see in those waters. And then you have the Devil's Triangle, not far from there.
Alaska, right? Yeah.
Kamchatka itself, you often hear about this because of climate. It's a well fortified military piece of Russian territory,
Hmm.
and things are going on there that are very hard to explain. Island of Sakhalin, I have a number of videos, and it's in the book, about strange phenomena and the tunnels, ancient tunnels that they found by Sakhalin, which is like a state secret.
Wow.
But the information seeped out. The Arctic, we can talk hours about the Arctic because, first of all, nowadays is the area of future confrontation.
Right.
I don't know, either Earthlings among themselves or Earthlings and someone else, but it's being fortified in Russia, and I'm
Hmm.
sure NATO and China wants to get foothold there,
Right.
and will get it. And we had in the book interesting description of waves of UFO flaps, I think they're called,
Hmm.
of UFO incidents, like in 1979. There was a very interesting case. Also, the head of the Russian Antarctic and Arctic research, Lukin, he wasn't afraid. He talked about his own UFO observations in
Wow.
that area in Paris. So what I find it interesting that sometimes uh, Soviet and Russian cosmonauts were less afraid to talk, maybe more free to an extent,
Hmm.
than some in the West. And military people spoke out about their observations. I told you about the incident with television
Hmm.
appeal. So it's hard to just to say, well, Soviet Union was a totalitarian country and everything was forbidden. Look, I didn't like the communist regime. I did everything I could, even after I left,
Yeah.
to bring democracy to Russia with other people. But it's not black and white when
Mm.
it comes to UFOs. You take China, for example.
Yeah.
China took chains of ufology in 1979.
Wow.
Yeah, in Soviet Union, it only happened in 1989.
Hmm.
And today, China is a giant expanding in all directions.
Right.
And they do their own thing,
Mm.
whether it be it's space exploration or UFOs, USOs.
Mhm.
I try to keep as much attention as I can using Russian sources.
Right.
And I tell you, this is incredible. I wish more people would understand that China is doing a lot of research, be it Antarctica, be it outer space, asteroids. China is planning to go to asteroids soon,
Mhm.
and I think they're going to look for so-called lurkers, which is Western discovery, actually,
Mhm.
objects or stationary devices that observe our planet from the asteroids. They know
Really?
about.
No,
Yeah,
I didn't know about that.
it's very interesting. Yeah, it's
Wow.
I have one or two videos on the subject, and I have a playlist about China, and I try to put as much information as possible. I mean, AI, they're moving ahead.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I want to tell you also,
Yeah.
they're building undersea, no, under the surface of the ocean, cities and seas. Down below at the bottom of the sea, next
Mhm.
to China, in various locations, and they will control this area because
Whoa.
they will have battles for islands, and they're allocating a lot of money. They're not making a lot of noise, but it's out there.
Wow. So build actual building under on the seabed
Yes, yeah,
cities.
on the seabed. Yeah, and I told you, Mariana Trench. They had a number. They have very cool submersible,
Like autonomous
apparatuses.
subs and that can go down there,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. Well, the thing about the Marianas Trench that got me really interested in it was the director James Cameron, the guy who did all of he
Mhm.
made massive movies. He's a multimillionaire, and he spent
Yeah,
I don't know how many millions of dollars of his own money on the special submarine because he wanted to
yeah,
film the go down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. Right, he made this big thing, and he's super interested in it. And I think if I'm not mistaken, the story goes that it got down there. I mean, he got to the point where he was getting really close and like it cracked, like something happened where the glass cracked or something. It was like very dangerous, and they had all this
yeah,
film. And the story goes from behind the scenes that they saw something amazing, and it freaked everybody out, and they got back up as quick as they could, and they never released the film, and they never released any of the footage. But I guess all the people that were involved have said it was, I don't know, kind of like The Abyss, the movie, like it was some kind of extraterrestrial weird. Reminds me of the Lake Baikal things from
we'll
the.
get to Lake Baikal, but I noticed that through decades of research,
Yeah,
there is information in Russia that is not published in the West, and it's not like propaganda or anything, but
yeah.
scientific information about what had been observed by Western scientists.
Oh, interesting.
And the very first one is, when was the first descent into Mariana Trench? It was an American Navy man and a Swiss scientist. And apparently, when they were down there, they saw an object with multiple lights
Hmm.
on it, moving on the seafloor, on the bottom floor. And I have it. It was published in the Soviet Union. Oh, no, sorry, post-Soviet Union Russia.
Yeah,
It's just one. But if you want to talk about Lake Baikal, now Lake Baikal, I've been studying from about 1993 for sure.
yeah.
There was a colonel. He passed away a few years ago. Former Soviet Colonel Mikhail Steinberg, who was a veteran of the Afghan wars and others. He was very perceptive. He had good connections, even serving in the army. And he was the one that brought this story.
Mm.
And I continued to my research and got in touch with the also now deceased Soviet and Russian writer Demidenko, who also observed, collected information. Bottom line is this. First of all, Lake Baikal is a very unusual body of water. We're
Yes.
not sure if it's not connected by tunnels with other bodies of water. It's got like oceans. It has very unusual fauna and flora, animals and plant life. It has science stations that are working down below in its waters. It's got the modern KGB station there, FSB. They're very much interested too. I think they're afraid more of China than of anything else, because China is next door and is very much interested in it.
Right.
It has very unusual natural phenomena,
Mm-hmm.
historical observations of UFOs and I don't want to say USOs, but unusual beings down below.
Right.
But then we come to the year 1982. This is what Steinberg brought out, and I also researched. And what happened is that the Soviets observed humanoids, 9 feet tall. Remember the description I gave you?
Yeah.
Clad in silvery suits, no breathing apparatus, working calmly at the bottom of, close to the bottom of Lake Baikal, doing something. Soviet Union, of course, cannot tolerate, nor would any country,
Yeah.
beings working, strategic locations. They tried to capture them, and they failed. And some frogmen perished because they were thrown out from the lake.
Wow.
To put it shortly.
So they actually they threw them out of
the
the lake.
like an incredible force pushed them out, and they didn't have enough apparatuses, to anyway.
But these were like hardened, like frogmen, military. These guys were not messing around. These guys knew what they were doing, right? They didn't just send like scientists in. These were like military. Yeah. Like, wow.
And what happened is that the narrator was, at that time, he was serving in Central Asia by another wonderful lake called East Sikul. Very interesting lake. A lot of secrets connected to it, military testing, UFOs, uranium, and so forth. It's in Central Asia. Mm-hmm. And apparently there was something like this in that lake, because the command came from the from Siberian territory. Don't mess with them. Don't touch them.
Really?
Whether be it Lake Baikal or Lake Issyk-Kul or anywhere else. So they knew about the presence. So I was very curious all these years, and Siberia is something special to me. There's relatives and all that. Anyway,
yeah.
And I was studying local myths, mythology, and I've been studying, current newspaper articles and updates. And people wrote to me, "There's something going on in Lake Baikal." Mm-hmm. And it's not only now. There are, like I said, observations that go back centuries. And it's a very sacred lake for the local people. And they have their own daily struggles, but they worship it. They don't want any harm to it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's a very complicated territory, and it's very unusual on the face of our planet. Something that shouldn't exist really the way it is.
Right.
But it's there.
It's amazingly deep. The blue-green algae, I think, was one of the things that always fascinated me. My friend John Luke told me about it years ago. That there's a certain type of algae that's a blue-green algae that only exists in that lake. It doesn't exist anywhere else, and it's completely different. And like you said, there's the flora and fauna on that lake are completely different than anywhere else on the planet. It's almost like another world, right? Just the makeup of it.
And it's not a safe world. There was a case that I've described in the books and elsewhere. I think it's 1964, when a local military unit was attacked by a crimson cloud that came up from the lake. Crimson cloud. Whoa. And they knew they would perish, so they locked themselves in a bunker, and they managed to survive. But the effect was, and there are stories like this from other parts of the Soviet Union, different ones.
Right.
It was a huge country.
Mm-hmm.
It was secret. There are many things were secretive.
Right.
Military tests were taking place, and sometimes they couldn't control them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they had observations. They were being observed. We'll come to the last, for example, area, space. Mm-hmm. Every Soviet space launch according to people who were there, be it Baikonur or other areas, had been under observation. They said it felt like we're under a microscope,
Wow.
according to a Soviet academician, Mintz, I believe he was named, because they were being observed. And no interference, I think nothing painful, but
Mm-hmm.
it was there. And then after the space probes would leave this
Yeah.
planet, then the also interesting things have been taking place in outer space. I've talked about it on television programs, radio programs, and now I can tell you also. It's incredible what the Soviet cosmonauts had gone through,
Right.
and they couldn't talk about, because if you talk too much, you'll be written off the program. Just like here,
Mm-hmm.
if you tell them that, listen, I'm aboard the Mir orbital station, and then I hear his voice in my head speaking to me and saying, listen, Ivan, Vasily, I know who you are. And to prove it, here is what happened to you when you were 4 years old, or 7 years old, or 10 years old. Only you know this.
Wow.
And the reason I'm speaking to you is this: you came here, you Earthlings, too early. You shouldn't be here. You need to go back. You need to grow up as a civilization, something like that, to put it crudely.
Yeah.
And this was called the whisper. That's one. The other
Whisper.
one, we have there is a cosmonaut that is very active, Kirchevsky, I believe, but uh, he is he has been describing what cosmonauts have been feeling in outer space. Sometimes they felt that they left their bodies and would wander on other planets. In their mind would be controlling an alien body, or you be it like even like an animal, like a dinosaur. Incredible. And these people were they're scientists, they're top engineers, best of the best.
Physical
You know,
health,
not like
mental health,
depicted,
amazing people. Right. The top of the
not
world.
like
Right.
Hollywood depicts them. I mean,
Mhm.
I have a lot of respect for them,
Right.
and they have to go through this. So who do you tell? Plus, I have in my videos, I have very good, interesting narratives from Eastern European cosmonauts,
Right.
also who had experienced stuff. And then cosmonauts now of Ukraine, who used to be in the Soviet Union
Mm-hmm.
programs, but now in Ukraine, and they say, look, we were forbidden to talk about UFOs.
Right.
But at the same time, they did talk about some things, even on pages of that magazine I told you that I read when I was a youth.
Yeah.
They said, yeah, we believe that there's space out there, there's intelligent life in space. And sometimes and say, oh, by the way, we know about ancient, ancient mythology, ancient aliens,
Mm-hmm.
and they would go into such cases, because in the Soviet Union, by the way, and I'm very proud of it,
Mm-hmm.
some of the first scientists who ever talked about ancient aliens, paleocontact, that's how we call it,
Mm-hmm.
were in the Soviet Union.
Ah,
And
wow.
it wasn't always easy, but they did publish their stuff. I've been in touch with many of them, like Garbovsky. If anybody wants to read, he's got incredible collection of information, like von Daniken, but different,
Right.
and sometimes before him too. And I liked von Daniken. I spoke to him. I told him a lot.
Yeah.
We had somebody in common that, you know, Alexander Kazantsev, who was a famous Soviet sci-fi writer, who was the one actually who proposed the idea of the Tunguska event being a alien spaceship. And that's how it all started in
Ah,
1945, 1946, and it led to creation of ufology in the Soviet Union.
that's amazing. So the Gunsa incident was the one that started ufology. The and if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's basically, I guess, for the way it's reported is there was an event in, was it Siberia? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think
Yeah, Siberia. Mhm.
Siberia, that was a big flash, a bright flash, and there were an entire forest was completely flattened. It was all the trees, everything was off, was burned flush. Everything was gone. All the vegetation was gone and everything for miles, right? Is that about right? Like,
It's a very complicated event. What it was, we don't know until now. And it's all I can tell you is that I keep watching the events down below. Now it's a state reserve, and
oh,
what's going on today? Even today, there's a lot of strangeness. But this is the event that, yeah, officially, I think started the whole 20th century ufology theme. But in Russia, in
mm-hmm,
the Imperial Russia, in Russia of Middle Ages, there were other incidents
of
like
course.
Rob Ozero, 1663,
Whoa.
when a huge object was hovering over a lake with rays coming from it, and people had observed. And there was a very keen local scribe who decided to memorize it, to make sure that people have memory of it, and
Right.
he wrote everything down. And that area had been studied even in the Soviet times. And this object would come for leave and come back, scare the peasants down below, very religious people. And it was by a lake, lake, and the church was there.
Yeah.
But he did write down very interesting details, and it couldn't be explained away that it was a meteorite, because meteorites don't come back.
Yeah.
But that's
That's amazing. One of the questions that popped in my mind, and I know that here in the West we have this connotation, but I think it's not so much maybe. But correct me if I'm wrong. But did a lot of the people at the time attribute any of these events, kind of like Fatima and before that, but inside of Russia as a religious experience? Did any of that would cross over as tied to a religion?
well, because most of the people at that time, they were very religious, and people attributed everything to divine intervention. But
Yes.
at the same time, because such events happen, and there were painters that would paint strange craft in the
Yeah.
sky. They could, there could be a deity, a god figure next to it, but at the same time, it's very much like modern spacecraft or UFOs.
Right.
And this we had back I have a book, Soviet UFO Files,
Hmm.
and another, but that's where I started. I put in so-called signs from the sky, znamenia in Russian,
Hmm.
and it started, I would say, around 11th century that they started depicting objects. But I want to mention something.
Yeah.
There was an Arab diplomat traveler from Baghdad. He was checking on Muslim territories at the time of the Volga kingdoms, let's say.
Okay.
So he traveled to that part of modern Russia,
Hmm.
and this was somebody who was very intelligent and observant, and he described the battle in the sky over the Volga, and how the local people told him, we see this fighting in the sky quite often, and this is not aurora borealis. You cannot
Right.
explain it like that in those territories. And you might know him, by there was a movie with Banderas called the 13th Rider, something like that. It was a Hollywood movie, but they didn't show this. They showed the Hollywood stuff as usual.
Right.
But this was a very keen. Ahmed ibn Fladlan was his name, and it took me a while to find his manuscript in Russian because of his descriptions of early Slavs. He was not in fashion,
Mm.
but anyway, this was the first observation that I can relate to, and then of course the Slavic observations, the Russians, and on and on. Even in my city of my birth, Kiev, and there is a very interesting manuscript. I'll never forget it. I think it was in the 12th century or something like that.
Hmm.
In my books, there was a bloody star observed over the city of Kiev for days, and people were afraid and scared. And then a body was dropped from that star,
Whoa.
and people recovered it. I'm trying to translate from ancient, Russian.
Right.
People recovered it. Uh, it was a fisherman, and it was so ugly. It was human, but so ugly that they drowned it.
Wow,
I
it was
never
alive?
forget this. This was, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was so interesting, and it was a manuscript. And then there is more, and even in my videos, I have about the three suns and so forth. So people were quite observant.
Right.
Even if we go to, I love Caucasus Mountains. I spent some time there in my
Yeah.
youth, archaeology and all that. And I have interesting stories about observations in the Kingdom of Georgia
Mhm.
and ancient Armenia, because not enough attention at all is being paid to Azerbaijan as well. And there
Mhm.
are interesting things happening. And yeah, they had observations of UFOs back from the 13th century to the 17th, 18th century. Azerbaijan,
Mhm.
if we speak about, for example, that country and the Caspian Sea, humanoids, underwater humanoids, one of the subjects I talk about.
Same as Lake Baikal. Same descriptions.
Different,
Different.
more different, more ancient. Iran
Wow.
has some stories about it too, but I go by mostly Azerbaijan. Caspian Sea is a very interesting body of water, and yeah, there have been sightings and very very detailed descriptions of this underwater humanoids.
Wow. So they're just basically the same thing is true is that they're humanoid shape, no
Yes.
breathing apparatus, no gills, there's no fins, there's no fish. That they're just pretty much humans underwater, right?
To an extent. One of them is it's humanoid, but it's not exactly like us. Ruhan Shah, I believe it's called. But there are others. And, but
Nobody talks about
that's
that.
not, yeah, yeah.
Nobody talks about that when it's connected to any of ufology or anything. Nobody likes to get into it. I think it's fascinating. I think it's probably one of the least discussed topics there are. Everybody's talking about space, but nobody wants to speak about oceans. I mean, that's a big thing, but there's bodies of water all around us that are hot
Yes.
topics. I mean, I live next to Lake Erie, by Ohio here, and it's one of the Great Lakes, and there's hundreds of years of reportings of UFOs in and out of the lake, and even to this day, there's videos of orbs coming in and out of the lake, and it's something to do with the water that's fascinating, and I think it's a very very underserved topic.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, and I mean, just the transmedium, Earth, space, sky. I mean, it's just interesting how that all ties together. I don't know. I think after all these years, I don't know if anybody's figured it out. I really don't.
Well, I'm sure there are, entities within, governments like Russia, China, USA for sure,
Yeah.
maybe beyond that, who are paying close attention. I would include Japan. They're very
Mhm.
curious, who are paying attention, and and they not only study, they also take measures. I have made a video not long ago about GRU. This is the military counterintelligence.
Okay.
Those are the tough guys, and they have Spetsnaz, special forces,
Hmm.
apparently. We're going back to the Soviet times because what they have now is very hard to know, but some things we know.
Mm.
This Spetsnaz was tasked with isolating, protecting, and hiding paranormal zones in the former Soviet Union
Whoa.
in areas like Taimyr, which is very little studied peninsula in the north in the Arctic area,
Wow.
and Siberia and so forth. Uh, Highly trained guys. They come, nobody knows what they do, nobody knows they exist. They do their thing, they isolate, they don't want foreign enemy, agents to get there, and they want to make sure that nobody touches it, nobody plays with it, and it's the areas of spatial temporal
Anomalies.
warps, other things. Like I already told you about Kamchatka,
Hmm.
that peninsula. I'm glad I found out a lot of things about issues with time
Whoa.
and space, displacements, and more than that. So, plus, of course, there's military there at all times. So, this GRU forces, from what we know, they had operated in a number of areas in the Soviet Union, definitely Siberia. I would guess Yakutia as well, for sure, Far East. And like when I was collecting information about those humanoids of Lake Baikal,
Yeah.
we found out through ufologists in the Far East, Vladivostok, about 1990s Russian naval counterintelligence on the trail of such a being. Well, they couldn't catch him, but they had very good observation. So, I'm sure they were interconnected somehow with GRU and everything else. It's what we, I'll tell you straightforward. I
Yeah.
don't like hype about crashed UFOs and collected bodies, and
Hmm.
you know if a spaceship travels immense distances to our planet, they're not going to lose their crew here even by an incident and not. I mean,
Yeah.
if these Russian GRU forces can isolate incidents so nobody knows, do you think space people or aliens would do? And I often tell, I put out, what should I say, requests to producers of TV programs and documentaries. If you want to know something about Soviet Union, that I'm glad, I'll tell you.
Hmm.
I told other programs, verify with me.
Yeah.
I will give you my databases. I will tell you what it is. And, to an extent, I think my work is serious because U.S. Navy Library has a special section on UFOs, and they use my book as a reference.
That's amazing.
To me, this is something that it's like a recognition,
Yeah.
because I want people to understand it's a very complicated planet we live in, and it's not only Roswell or Area 51
Right.
or Rendlesham Forest. There's much more taking place in China, in Russia, just
Azerbaijan, everywhere. It's literally everywhere. It's
Canada, I'm
Canada.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, the any place that's a national park here in America, I guarantee there's something going on there. There's any place that's protected in America for, you can't walk there because there's a special endangered plant or animal or whatever. There's something that they're covering up everywhere that's there. They have monitors. I'm sure that they know all the places like Skinwalker Ranch is just the tip of the iceberg. There's 40 of those all over the United States. I'm sure they're all over the world where space and time and, is malleable in some degree. And I think they tried to keep a lid on it, but I think that
Well,
they're grasping at straws most of the time too.
I'll give you an example. In Los Angeles,
Hmm.
underneath the downtown Los Angeles area, this goes back. They have tunnels that are sealed off.
For
They don't want
years.
people to go in.
1800s they found those, I think, right?
Yeah, and it was somebody who had researched in 1930s. Well, I talked to people who were down below uh, because of professional reasons,
Hmm.
elevators, mechanics, and others, and they
Yeah.
said that, Paul, you wouldn't believe the footprints we find there. We
Like
can't
what?
describe them. And this was that was 4 decades ago.
Really?
And this is just an example that, you take California, also, there's so much inexplicable
Hmm.
deserts.
Yeah. I mean, what are the footprints? I didn't hear anything about the footprints found underneath there. What are they,
Well,
like humanoids or?
footprints, it's hard to explain. There's more than that. That's why they keep it closed. But again, you have to
Wow.
be, it's not that, you have to know people, you have to talk to them. And
Right.
sometimes it happens because you are interested
Hmm.
and they were right there and they don't think too much about it.
Right.
But then we also have the island of Catalina,
Huge.
and things took place there. For
USOs.
example, we have Arizona, which a lot of secrets in the deserts.
Of course. It goes back to giants. There's all that in the deserts. It's interconnected to all of those. The hollow earth theory or the civilizations that live underground that still may be part of everything that,
Oh, this is cool. And
yeah.
for those interested, because we're not going to have enough time, but
Yeah.
about the underground subterranean civilizations, yeah, in Russia, in the Ural Mountains, one of the favorite areas of my research, not only because of Dyatlov Pass, it's not, shouldn't say favorite because, but there's
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of what made it famous, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's one. If you know the Urals, it's just you understand why it would happen there.
Yeah.
We have had stories about the huge people. This could be like wonder people
Mm-hmm.
that have gone down underground subterranean worlds a few centuries ago, and some similar stories from the Arctic. And I keep researching. This is so interesting. And I tell you why it started, because when I was in a Soviet pioneer camp, it's like, say, roughly like a Boy Scout camp
Okay.
in the Soviet Ukraine a long time ago.
Yeah.
Kids would talk. We had kids from villages too, not a lot, but some, and they say, "Listen, we have tunnels, small tunnels down below, and this reptile being, not being, they would describe something like reptiles, and they would like small dragons would climb out, and people in the village knew what to do, how to make sure they don't bother you." Okay, we didn't have too much television like in the United States, in the
Right.
Soviet Union, to give us ideas like this. We
You're
had
not watching cartoons and thinking this stuff up, right? Yeah, this is a real event that these kids are describing.
and the way they talked about, I'll never forget it. I was young, but then I started research, and the stories from the days of the Russian Empire, early days, and so forth, about the strange, really reptilian beings, and I'm talking about animals, that were sighted in the area of the Urals, but there's much more.
Mm-hmm.
And this story about the underground people. And then it took to Mongolia and
Mm.
areas around Mongolia, and the search for Shambhala and
Ah,
the underground kingdoms. This was serious stuff. They
yeah.
really studied it, and there were disappearances,
The
and then
Nazis
the
were there in
legend
World
of the
War II.
white.
The Nazis were there, and I'm sure, right? That was a big deal pre World War II,
Oh, we
during World
had
War II.
them. Yeah, we battled them all over. They
Mm-hmm.
were trying to get a hold of such paranormal significant areas as the Kola Peninsula in the Soviet Arctic, and we still, there's still bases that are being discovered nowadays. They didn't know Nazi bases, meteorological
Really?
bases in the Arctic. Yeah, I have a few videos about it.
Wow.
Have been discovered in the last few years. One of them ended very badly because they ate bear meat, and they took some bacteria and became sick. But they were very keen on controlling Soviet Arctic, finding out as much as possible. Plus, you had the component, the angle of this ritualistic research on Anerbe,
Mm-hmm.
Nazi scientists, like Indiana Jones movies. But in two, they did.
But that was true.
In Ukraine,
They were vicious. The Anunnaki were vicious too. They got what they wanted where they wanted to go,
yeah,
and they didn't
yeah,
take any prisoners or put up with
no,
anybody.
you're right.
They were terrible from um, all accounts, all the way across the board. And they had a mission, and it was the esoteric part of that. And we didn't touch about any of that, but I'd really love to ask you about that, because me being a Freemason, obviously, part of that whole world. And I've spoken to a couple of people. I've not met a brother from Russia yet, or from Ukraine, or any of that part of the world, because I know it's very secretive there, and it's very frowned upon in certain circles. I did hear that Putin is in charge of all Masons in Russia, probably because he's in charge of everything in Russia. But I don't know if that's true. But my level of research has always been to find other brothers and to find the connections to the mystery schools and how they all connect to everything there. So asking you, from all of your research and, living there, growing up there and everything, how was Freemasonry or Rosicrucianism or any of the secret societies, how did that play into the overall culture of Russia, of Ukraine, and the world on that
Okay,
side?
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
In 1920s, they had a number of groups active in the Soviet Union. It all ended with the Stalin's purges.
Mm.
No prisoners taken. Most of them were executed.
That's terrible.
What you have now is after the end of the Soviet Union. Now you have new movements trying to emulate what happened before. which is okay. That's I believe in freedom,
Hmm.
but with this, with the Rosenzweig and everything else, with this, I want to tell you some of the earliest esoteric research conducted by the Soviet secret police took place in 1920s until about 1937. And it was a very, and I've described to the hilt in my videos and my
Hmm.
books. It was what's the right word? It was operated out of the special department of the KGB of the time, GPU, it was called. Anyway, under the guidance of Gleb Boki, who was very much, he knew about Freemasons. That's his past. He was in the circles, in the hip circles of St. Petersburg, this and that, until he became a Soviet Red Army commander and then KGB person. But he protected scientists like Barchenko, and they had money to go and study esoteric areas in the Kola Peninsula. That's the one that Nazis wanted to grab too.
Right.
They found very interesting things. People can see it in my videos. Really interesting things in the Kola Peninsula,
Wow.
including ancient civilizations. And you had this component. He protected, to an extent, possible Freemasons, other movements. But it all came to the end. Stalin was like Putin. He didn't believe in all. He
Yeah.
destroyed, Stalin destroyed and executed, and a lot of documents got lost. Now, about the more about Freemasons in Ukraine, there's a writer, Alexander Kulsky, a very intelligent person who was in his younger years involved with ufology groups in Ukraine under the guise of scientific research. They
Right.
from universities. He wrote a number of books, and specifically about the Rosenzweigs, if I pronounce it right, the Rose. What's the English?
Rosicrucians.
Rosicrucians.
Hmm.
That's a society.
Hmm.
Yeah, he had good documents about them, not only in the former Soviet Union, but especially in Europe,
Mm.
because
Right.
Soviets also collected stuff like that. He wrote a lot about them, and I will never forget. Very interesting information. His books were published mostly in the late 1990s. I'm not. I hope he's still alive, but he was a very cornucopia of information.
Yeah.
So this knowledge existed,
Hmm.
and of course, even after Stalin's purges, people just went underground
Of
and were
course.
quiet about it
Hmm.
because to survive, you had to. Sometimes you didn't have to talk.
Hmm.
And I even remembered in my days in the Soviet Union, I was young, but still, some things you kept to yourselves or tried to survive persecutions, like the Baptists. Well, it wasn't easy for the Jews, but that was more like ethnic. It was not as much as religious because there was no religion.
Right.
But Baptists, where I had neighbors, Baptists, and they were persecuted. Nice
Wow.
people, did not drink, did not bother anybody, just believed in their, God, everything.
Yeah.
They were persecuted. So imagine groups like Freemason. That's a challenge to the
Mm.
government.
Right. Of course. Right. Right. Because we keep
You
secrets.
understand the atmosphere. My parents, I remember, I'll never forget that we used to hide religious artifacts made underground by our neighbor because this was forbidden. What was it? Crucifixes and other things. Russian Eastern Orthodox Church, but to an extent that it was not sanctioned. And the KGB would come and raid her apartment. They would not touch us because we were not of the same faith, so they didn't think. So we would help, but our neighbor would be targeted because of this. So
Just for crucifixes, like like a crucifix.
yeah, but it has to be. Look, they tolerated the religion to the extent that they controlled it. Not only
Mm.
Christian, of course,
Yeah.
but we were brought up as atheists. It was an atheist society.
Right.
But aside from that, you got here. You have a society, secret society, or not even and a lot of nonsense was being, disseminated about Freemasons too. I remember.
Yeah. 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 It was a big deal. I always thought that, and through my research, that they had a part in keeping knowledge, in ensuring that knowledge is passed down to future generations. That was special through symbology and things like that.
So for you, because it's your interest, Alexander Kulsky, Kulsky, tremendous books. I wish they would be translated in English because I use them
Mm-hmm.
for my research, and I always attribute, of course, the source. He was the one that first time brought up information about the so-called Kiev rocket. This
Ah,
was an object discovered, buried in the time, it was Soviets call it Tsarist times, but in the times of the Russian Empire, they were responsible people who found out about archaeological discovery of a very unusual uh, rocket-like object. They couldn't
really?
even, they had no reference to it
Right.
in Kiev during archaeological digs. And the governor at that time said, no, we cannot touch it. Put soil back on it. So they did. Years go by, revolutions, changes, and they rediscover it in Stalin's times.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring it up, Soviet archaeologists, and they find it's very complicated rocket-like object. We're talking about modern rockets.
Right.
And inside, from what Kulsky described, they found Sanskrit-like writings,
Wow.
depictions of unusual battle scene, something like that. And from what we know, this object was cut in several pieces and taken to Moscow, and that's it.
Wow. So
And
was it, it
that's
was
it.
was it a machine? Was it like
It
a
was a machine
wow.
rocket. But I will tell you, because I grew up in Kiev,
Yeah.
you know, archaeology, you dig anywhere in the hills of Kiev, you can find an ancient dagger or a coin, because so many wars, so many invasions.
Mm,
We had the tunnels we were not allowed to go to, but we did to an extent possible.
yeah.
So Kiev doesn't surprise me with anything archaeological wise.
Huh. It's like an ancient repository.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I don't want to get into the whole politics of the war and everything. And the whole thing sucks. And I don't know why Putin's doing what he's doing. But I through my research, there's been many different proven examples of countries invading another countries. Russia, we just talked to the Ananabe, right? They just went all over and did whatever they want. Could there be something in Kiev that Putin, Russia wants to get their hands back on?
I don't. It's a very complicated war, and how it started, I don't want to get into it.
Of
I'm
course,
very sad for
everybody.
destroyed future
Yeah,
of Ukraine and Russia. I'm
mm-hmm.
very sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So many lives lost.
Of course.
When it comes to, if you are interested in special locations
Mm-hmm.
in Ukraine, there is,
Yeah,
and Nazis were very much interested in. Now it's under Russian control, but before it doesn't matter.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't erase anything that happened 5,000 years ago.
Right.
The grave complex in Ukraine, not far from Melitopol. You people can look in my
Your
uh,
videos you have it
YouTube
listed.
channel. There's
Yeah,
there's a lot. Well, Nazis are very much interested because if true, you have writings that go back to ancient Sumer or Sumerian-like.
right.
It's a very stone grave, Kamena Mohila. That's in Ukrainian and Russian.
Mm.
Uh, a very incredible site in Ukraine. But outside of that, Ukraine, Crimea used
Mm-hmm.
to be Russia, Ukraine, now Russia again.
Right.
It has a lot. I was in Crimea. I've
Oh
seen things.
yeah. How was that?
Yeah, I was many years ago. But more interesting, I was also there is an island in the Black Sea, small island, and my father found a way to get me there to see what archaeologists were doing, digging up ancient Greek polices, cities, and
Really?
they let me inside a cave. I'll never forget where there were remnants, fragments of Greek vases and so forth. You have a lot of it in Ukraine. This small island had also Vikings who stopped there and left things behind.
Wow.
So in that part of the world, there's so much archaeology.
Thousands and thousands of years. It's
Yeah.
amazing. Like you said, you can just go in the backyard and you in Kiev and
Yes.
just pull a dagger out or something from who knows when, and it's just everywhere. Just the history has to be amazing, and it's so understudied or so I think obviously because of the Iron Curtain and everything before that, there wasn't a lot of cross pollination between America and that part of the world at all. But I think now, obviously, since 1991, 1990, that happened again. But it seems like you said, there was a brief moment where you had this open window, and then it slowly closed back down, where there's not a lot. I mean, you are the only person that I know that gets new Russian reports or Ukrainian reports and translate it into English for everybody and do videos. And I thank you so very much for doing that. It's a huge service to everybody who's into this topic and has loved this as much as I have and everybody else has for years. I don't find anybody else doing that. And it's amazing to me that it's so open. The way that you describe it, it's like, yeah, they just talk about it like it's no big deal. Where here, even still with all, after 2017 New York Times, there's still a stigma behind it. But there, I don't even know if the stigma even existed. Based on what the things you do. One of the main questions I wrote down because I wanted to ask you about this was, and obviously you're aware in America of the Men in Black. You have an experience, you have something happen here, and the Men in Black show up and tell you to be quiet, and sometimes they're not human. Is there any Russian reference to that? Is there any correlation to like the Men in Black kind of experience that we have here in America?
Well, first of all, if the KGB needed to come and talk to you, they would come. They don't have to be in black; they can be in purple suits.
It's that the KGB doesn't give a shit. They just show up and talk to you.
No, they will. And then again, but I told you about this Spetsnaz, GRU people.
Yeah.
There you go. They will do whatever they want to do. And we knew,
yeah.
They had interesting cases a lot. I try to. First of all, let me say that I have to thank my wife for letting me do it and take away. I want to bring also attention as much as possible to Central Asia.
Yes.
And Mongolia. I have a lot, as much as I can, about Mongolia, and I hope to have more.
Right.
Very unique piece of territory, so to say, and of course, free nation. Nowadays, it used to be under Soviet control a lot.
Right.
Central Asia, there's so much.
I'm sure there's a lot of documentation then from former Soviet Union about the experiences that were going on in Mongolia then at the time where the unit was still running the show, right?
I have accounts of Soviet military who had served in Mongolia and strange things they had seen. And then we go back to the 1920s and to the times of the big game when the empires were fighting each other, even when the Russian Empire was against the British Empire and when they had to stop British spies from that part of the world. Very, very interesting. There's a lot. I have a lot of it. And Przevalsky, for example, this was a Soviet general staff officer, explorer of Asia. Some say father of Stalin too, because they look and he actually spent time in the village at the time when Stalin's mother was young. But that's going into rumors. I don't. This doesn't.
Yeah.
Say is not as interesting as what Przewalski had seen and connected and observed, but there were others, and they had very interesting, very observant, very brave Russian imperial military officers, like the researcher of the Far East, Arseniev, whom I use a lot. I love his books. I reread them. People might remember the movie called Dersu Urzala, a Russian-Japanese movie about adventures beginning of 20th century of explorers in the Far East, maritime province and so forth, and what they had seen, encounters with bandits, and so. But they also had seen paranormal stuff. And we come into the area of the flying man legends and observations. Yeah. It's very interesting, and still. I have confirmation from 1990s. I had written in Fate magazine, I think about 35 years ago about this. And since then I've collected. Very unusual. The flying humanoid. And you had serious people like Arseniev who provide information about it. And it's not something like tabloid stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing. It reminds me of Mexico in the past 20 years or so. That's
Oh,
another flap of the flying humanoid, and it looks like a humanoid flying. And then even in LA for the past 5 or 6 years, they had the Rocket Man. They were calling him the guy that was on a rocket. They saw him from a bunch of different airplanes all over the West Coast. They said there was a flying human. There was a guy on a rocket, and they never released any footage. There's like these weird videos. There's a couple of people that have some videos online of a person that's basically floating along, but you can't tell what it's going on. Kind of had a helmet. You think it was just a round head type thing, but it's interesting how that correlates between those two. I always look for the patterns, and it seems like there's a lot. But then once I think I know something, it just goes right out the window.
try to bring somebody from Mexico.
Hmm.
Mexico is a unique place. I did field research 3 times in my life in Yucatan.
Oh, you did?
I did, limited, but based on ideas of Soviet scientists.
Oh.
And I knew what to look for. And I got befriended local people. I spoke better Spanish then than I do now,
Hmm.
but local people, and they told me that, Paul, there's a lot in the jungle that we don't want to people to know because otherwise it will be stolen
Really?
and other. I don't want to go into that, but I do want to say that for cryptozoology enthusiasts, you'll find a lot in Yucatan, and I did a few videos of my experiences. Yucatan and the border of Belize.
Hmm.
It's this is a very interesting land, and more will be found. But there are other areas of Mexico that people should pay attention to. It's a diverse, wonderful, interesting country.
It's beautiful. I was just there in November. I was doing some of the cenotes that were around in the Yucatan Peninsula,
Oh,
and
that's
it's beautiful. I mean, the amount of dense jungle is mesmerizing. I mean, we took a van. Man, it had to have been an hour off road, just straight into the jungle, and we got to a cenote, which is
yeah,
obviously this is all touristy, but still, I mean, they try to keep it preserved as best they can. And they had a platform you can go up, and then you had to rappel down into this cave from the top. But to go into it, there's bats and there's ice cold water underneath it, but it's all natural cave, and it was just untouched pretty much. But it was amazing that you could see that, and it was just like a whole world down there underground. And but then you come up, and the forest is the jungle is untouched, and the wildlife there. I can't remember the name of the animal. Kind of looks like a raccoon, but had a longer nose, and just walk right up to you. Wasn't afraid of humans, and there were signs for jaguars or panthers on the road. Kind of like we have in America, like watch out for bear crossing or deer crossing, and they were there, and they said, yeah, we haven't really seen them, but there could be anything there. I mean, that's just so dense and so thick that jungle. I think most of it looks like it's unexplored even.
unexplored, and they wanted to say. But I was also interested in the so-called underwater roads of the coast of Yucatan because we had
Yeah.
rumors about Soviet submarines operating in the waters. In maybe one of the missions was to look for such roads, which to me is a
Wow.
little bit surprising because to expend so much state money, so the governmental money to send a submarine to that water. I'm
For
not
that
talking
far
about
away.
Cuba. I'm talking about this is all murky,
Hmm.
but there are roads like this. They do exist off the coast of Yucatan. And like I said, there's more and more that's being found there.
Hmm.
And sometimes you find things by chance. I did. I
Did
did.
you?
Yeah, I found out stories about the we can call it Yeti
Yeah.
of
Bigfoot, maybe
of,
big Bigfoot. Yeah.
it wasn't so big maybe as in other countries, but I have it in my videos. So
Hmm.
long story. But one of the areas I really like to explore um, is was Yucatan because I had a chance to.
Yeah.
If I have a chance to go to Mongolia and on the trail, so to say, of Ivan Yefremov, when people look at my channel, I really recommend seeing this video. He was one of the greatest Soviet, I would say,
Expl-
writers
Explorer too, wasn't he? An explorer as
and
well.
explorer.
Yeah.
And what he found in Mongolia is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And it wasn't easy for him, but the discovery itself. was great. Then later he couldn't leave Soviet Union, although he had good acquaintances in China too. But the bottom line was that the KGB suspect that he was not a human being, that he was an extraterrestrial. Yeah, it's a whole story. It's there. There was a criminal case that was not, is still classified. There is no more Soviet Union.
And it's still classified.
Volumes, 40 volumes of. They tried to grab his ashes, but his wife would not. She actually was not physical, but she said no to the KGB. And I guess she had a few people who helped her.
Wow.
They searched his apartment, the KGB. They took a lot of stuff that belonged to him. The impact of Ivan Yefremov's books on Soviet younger generations is incredible. Because of him, people became cosmonauts and went into study of science. It was an incredible person. I did some other research, Africa related, from his books, and I wanted to do more if I could, because his knowledge was encyclopedic, really encyclopedic. His friend in UCLA, because he corresponded with a scientist, called him a person out of bounds of time and space.
Wow.
You understand?
Yeah.
And we still don't know. But the KGB, they didn't have idiots working there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They
had maybe some fools, but they knew what they were doing, and they were on his case. At first, they thought he was a spy, but then they quickly realized no, he knew too much. He knew where Soviets in later years would find diamond, what is it called? Diamond tubes deposits in where diamonds would be.
Yeah.
Well, he knew about this back in 1940s, and he wrote about this in his books and something else. So they became very suspicious. But I got to tell you, because of his ideas, I tried to do research in other countries, and it's very interesting.
That's amazing. And are his books translated into English at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I highly recommend the one called Land of Foam, Foam. That's English translation.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful novel. If Hollywood had brains, they would definitely make a movie out of it. It's about a group of slaves in Egypt, ancient Egypt, Greeks, Semites, from other countries too, Phoenicians, I think, who try to escape the ancient Egyptian, Pharaoh kept them enslaved. Anyway, the attempt failed, but because of this, the Pharaoh found out they were brave people, and he decided to give them freedom, to earn freedom by capturing a huge rhinoceros. And whoever is left behind, they had to capture him with bare hands, basically.
Wow.
Was free to travel to Africa, wherever they want to. And this is where it starts. Whoever survived, there were, I think, 4 or 5 friends, they traveled to Africa, to a place where they found a Phoenician ships would come. But the travel to Africa, this is where Yefremov put a lot of his knowledge in. And when in Africa, I got to tell you, I have to say that he knew much, much more than a Soviet writer in the late 1940s should. This is a wonderful book. You can't put it down. It's available in English. And I know I always recommend it to people to read. And he had another one, but that's about Alexander the Great times. Besides his writings about space exploration.
Wow. In the 40s.
1940s, then 1950s. The last book was, I would say, 1960s, and it was banned in the Soviet Union.
Really?
Because this book showed the society very much like Soviet Union, and they didn't like. It was an incredible personality.
Wow, that's amazing.
Whoever he was.
And they thought he was an alien.
Well, they had proof. They don't. It's not that they. This is not Stalin's times that you say, well, you're a Japanese spy, and no, they had to have documentary evidence. 40 volumes. They had to ask people. They had to follow him. So obviously they knew something.
And it's still classified, and the Soviet
It's so
Union
classified.
is no longer in existence.
I provide a lot in my video, and I push it. I push it on the on X and other, so
Yeah.
people would understand. It's more than that. There is a story I'll never forget. There's a huge, cool story, and I'll be brief
No, yeah. Don't take your time. I want to hear it.
about a discovery of life-giving waters
Mm.
by a Dutch ship in the, I think it was 18th century, and then in the 20th century, a Soviet vessel got stuck to something underwater. They found out it was the remnants of the Dutch ship, and they
Oh.
bring up a capsule or whatever it was with information sealed inside. Long story short, the Dutch ship somewhere between Africa and India, I think,
Mm-hmm.
they chanced upon, they were taking samples of water, deep water. And when they brought up this water in a special vessel, some of it spilled on the hand of a seaman who had deep gash wound. And within hours, he had nothing. He
Whoa.
healed. And Yefremov never wrote anything without a reason. He
Right.
even gave coordinates of
What?
this. Yes. And I have it in my video.
Oh my
It's in the
God.
book. Yes. But it's a story. However, there is a tie to South Africa in the Dutch times and other periods. Very interesting plot, and Soviet times too. But he wanted to express that yes, there is such life-giving waters way down below. We don't know how it came by. And I was thinking, with all the money Soviet Union had, or instead of spending it and giving it to various idiotic, people's movements abroad, why don't you send an expedition there?
Yeah.
You have elderly leaders.
Right.
Brezhnev could have used it.
Yeah. They could pull Lenin back out of that glass box that he's.
I hope not. So,
We all hope not.
yeah. So no, but that gives you an extent of knowledge. No, also
Coordinates.
they
It's
know about
amazing.
me in India because I wrote about a lot because I wrote about Yefremov and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
his knowledge and respect for ancient knowledge of India,
The Hindu.
ancient
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
skills, and of course the whole philosophy, Hinduism, Mahabharata, and so
Mm-hmm.
you read his books. It's like educational, and that's another angle that he showed in his books. And I think he had good friends in China in the Purple Laboratory,
Mm.
judging by papers that you know are on the open sources.
Yeah.
Good friends. I'm not government. I'm talking about scientists.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
I think they gifted him with with a very old ancient globe made of metal.
Wow.
So complicated story, and his findings in Mongolia are exciting. That's why I want to go to Mongolia one day if I can.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that just because of China and Mongolia and that whole region. I mean, I've read stories and I've seen photographs of the pyramids in China. Are you familiar with the pyramids where they've basically put dirt and trees? They've planted trees on top of them to make them look like they're hills or matter, but they're all over China. And there's photos from the World War II from the 40s of a completely white pyramid in China and a grouping of them. But most people don't know that because they're completely hidden. The government will just throw dirt on top of them and plant trees on them, but they're all over, from what I understand.
It's one of the interesting. They have lakes with Atlantis like this. If you can describe
Yeah.
objects down below, they have a lot in China. They have the inner Mongolia. China is a complicated society. I had a lecture in Hong Kong, I
Hmm.
think in 2012, or I don't know. And yeah, there were a lot of people very much. They're very educated and
They're open
very
about
much
it,
into this.
right? I mean, are they? I mean, I don't know. I would imagine, but you would know more than I. Are they open about it? I mean, can they freely talk about it?
In China,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
In China, yeah. I have. one of the videos I made, and I'm very proud of, is about the UFOs over the Middle Kingdom, so to say,
Mm,
how it has been going on, this research in China in our modern times.
right.
And yeah, they have apparently also, they have the government allows conversations and actually encourages people to study it and to report, but within limits, of course. However, yeah, they're very keen on it.
Hmm.
They have had research. Um, from what we know,
Yeah.
Hong Kong was a little bit different,
Ah.
and it's more in line now. But still,
Mhm.
the Hong Kong UFO Club, very nice people. I was very much impressed, and the whole Chinese civilization itself. Interesting. They knew because of my publications about the so-called the Yellow Emperor,
Mm,
and it's in the field of ancient aliens stuff.
right.
And what I base it on the works of Soviet sinologists like Lisovsky, others. I want to give them credit, who discovered information about the first emperor of China and legends about him coming from another star and how he gave distributed knowledge on this
Wow.
planet to the ancient Chinese and his helpers. And when you read who his helpers were, it's like modern day robots.
Really?
Yeah. And then from this, I went a lot deep into a study of whenever I could ancient China, their robot,
Hmm.
later inventions of robots and other things, especially UFO observations over China through the centuries
Yeah.
and more. And I found very interesting observation of a Russian emigre who was a former military commander after Civil War,
Hmm.
and what they had cited over China, East China too, in 1920s. So, yeah, yeah, it's interesting.
It's amazing that Japan too. That whole region has
Yeah,
amazing stories that
yeah,
just go back forever, and a lot of it isn't shared across this way. I mean, because we think we have the monopoly on it. I don't know why. It's interesting to say, well, why do they always show up in America? And it's like it's not happening only in America. It's like
no,
the recent drone flap, that's been was
hmm
hot here in America over the past winter and up till now where it's happening all over America, it's happening over, but it was happening all over Europe, it was happening all over everywhere, it was all over the globe, but we just heard one side of it, and everybody's trying to point the finger at everybody else as China, and I'm sure in China they're saying it's the United States, and I'm sure in Europe they're saying it's Russia, and I'm sure in Russia they're saying it's everybody, NATO, or but it's interesting to see how that whole thing unfolds, and how it's the same, but we all put different lenses on it and try to blame everybody else. But you got to believe that there's some closed door negotiations going on, to try to discuss this and to talk about it. I always heard that there was a NATO closed door thing saying that, if anything ever tried to come down and invade Earth, that NATO and basically the allied countries or whatever would join together and try to combat the threat.
yeah.
But
Well,
you would hope.
NASA
Yeah.
and Roscosmos met a few years ago, and they talked about aliens. I have a video on it, but most important, when all this drone situation started, I
Yeah.
would say about a week before, there was a meeting
Hmm.
of nuclear states. I made a video about this. I had a lot of views on it.
Yeah.
There was a meeting. They talked about the situation and what to do, what not to do. It was 1 week before all this exploded with the drones.
Really.
So yeah, yeah, it was open. Yeah, I still have it. Sometimes I republish it too.
Yeah.
No, they all work together. Those who have to,
Yeah.
you know, the top countries, the of course nuclear holding countries. So you have that,
Hmm.
and no, you're right.
Yeah, it's amazing. And then the other thing, and I'll get off of this horse, but I've heard this as well. Like you said, with the rocket was found in Russia that they tried to break into, and
Mhm.
I've heard multiple stories that whoever they are, the others they call them, will leave intact, like you said, they're not just going to crash, but I've heard stories that they leave intact craft, like basically running with the keys on, right? Like it's just open. Here you go. We're going to put this one down here for you in Russia. We're going to put one for China. We're going to put one for America. We're going to put one, everywhere just to see, what we can do. One of the theories is that if they seeded the technology everywhere, that we would, try to reverse engineer it and maybe, advance us. And the other theory on the darker side was that they're equipping us with a means to find out who's the strongest out of all of us, and then that they'll deal with whoever's left, right? So if we.
John, I want to tell you something.
Yeah.
There's always this explanation to India.
Mm-hmm.
As an example,
Yeah.
I've done a lot of research of the Manas. I use
Vimanas.
Russian information
Yeah.
and also from Mahabharata and other Indian writings
Mm-hmm.
about the extent of India, ancient Bharat into Siberia and so forth. But the bottom line is this: this could have been a remnant of the ancient Indian
Culture, civilization.
culture who traveled, to other. I'm not at all denying it's something alien, but I'm saying that there is enough to show that there was a very advanced civilization or
Mm-hmm.
two in the past. In Russia, there have been findings back in early 1990s of nanotechnology like objects in the Urals.
Wow.
I've did presentation on one of the TV
Mm-hmm.
shows, and I write about it, and I have video,
Mm-hmm.
ancient nanotechnology in modern Russia.
Right.
It's there. I know people who had it. I remember speaking to some, but just there's no money to fund this, because what is the practical, where would a government put money into? Where do you explore and develop AI or plasma, or weaponry, or do you look for fragments of possible ancient civilization?
Right.
It's all practical,
Right.
and that's why there is not really that much money for such research.
Mm.
But there is money maybe for the Spetsnaz GRU to isolate what is known. I am
Right.
sure the United States has the same in China, same units,
Mm-hmm.
similar units that have to have control over inexplicable situations.
Of course, but for multiple reasons. Yeah, you don't want it. You don't want your enemies to get a hold of
Mhm.
it. You don't want anybody else to get a hold of it, and you don't want normal people stumbling in on it, and you don't want it getting out, or like
Exactly.
it's all of the above, right? You just got to contain it and study it. I think. I mean, that's probably the best thing, and it's probably been going on forever. The indigenous cultures here, the Native Americans, have all the sacred sites that they respect, and they don't go to, and that they pay their respects to. I'm sure that happens all over
Sure.
the globe.
Sure.
The Urals for sure, right? I mean, I think the indigenous culture I've learned from watching your videos is very entrenched over there in everything that's happening, and it's amazing to see that traditions have gone on forever, and people respect the land, they respect the spirits or whatever they call them, and they get pretty much left alone. It's just when you start going in there with guns and messing with people is when things start bad going on, right?
I want to mention something interesting. It's not politics, but it's
Yeah.
curious that Putin a few years ago had a special meeting with the shamans of Russia. That was very interesting. He
Hmm.
met them. Um, so it wasn't easy for the indigenous population to survive the Soviet period.
Of course.
And I made a video recently about the uprising they had. A very brave people,
Hmm.
but at the end they were crushed and alcohol came into play,
Hmm.
and now there is revival, which is very good, because you don't want to lose languages, you don't
Right.
want to lose cultures.
Cultures, right. Traditions. Yeah. All of those things. Yeah. That's amazing that actually took place. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. The Pope did something back in 2020. He went down to South America and met with the indigenous cultures there as well. And I thought that was interesting how,
Sure.
you're trying to embrace that, to see, um, I don't know, the Vatican doesn't play too well within Russia. I'm sure that they don't have a reach in there, but I suspect they probably do still at some point. I've been tracing that line for a
Oh,
long time as well.
Vatican? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have that video. Maybe you had seen about this Russian. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, this was amazing. He was a brave guy. I mean,
Yeah.
he's gone. He was betrayed by his wife to the KGB. Well, she turned him in,
Yeah.
so she wouldn't be arrested. But when it comes to cultures and stuff, I'll never forget. People don't know about it, but Southwest Africa and what German Empire did to the locals. I I had the chance to speak to some local people, and it's wonderful cultures. I
Yeah.
was picking up on some other things in the use of Africa of the psi phenomenon, telepathy, and so forth. It's very
Right.
interesting, and also based on some of the ephemeral work. But what Germans did to people in Southwest Africa, eh, horrible. But times have changed.
Right.
So even in Russia, again, indigenous people learn a lot, and some has been preserved, some knowledge preserved. Like Yakutia, it's wonderful legends and the objects that fly over Yakutia or in its waters. And it's a huge. It's like you put France multiplied by 4 times. That's the territory of Yakutia.
Wow. That's
And
amazing.
and when things come down and people have a chance to travel, it's one of the definitely areas I recommend. If you want to touch paranormal, at
Yeah.
least see it. Don't touch it. See it. Yeah, better not to touch.
That's right from the KGB files, right? Like, don't touch those people.
It's better not to touch. It's good. It's better to stay away from. Like about the Kola Peninsula, I never say completely everything I know about some of the sacred sites
Yeah,
because we don't want people to go and mess it up.
of
They
course.
have petroglyphs have been destroyed by curious 20th century, 21st century tourists. It's hor- I can't even tell you what is being done.
Mm. And the thieves that try to sell things in the black market will go chisel things out and just like in Peru. I mean, I guess I've read that in Peru they just dig into holes and just throw everything out and just sell what they can. And you know the big mummy thing that's going on now. Everybody thinks these are aliens, and then the skull, elongated skulls. I mean, that's everywhere as well. That could be a different culture, a different race that we don't know. But that's all over the globe. It's not just there. So
Outlaw archaeologists.
yeah,
That's a very bad development after the fall of the Soviet Union. Even before they had, but it was more under control. The so-called outlaw archaeologists.
yeah.
There was
But
no control. They stole so much
in
and
Russia,
sold.
I didn't realize that it was bad in Russia.
Yeah, why don't you, if you have a chance? I
Yeah.
mean, look, I have this video about the so-called diggery. This is from the English word diggers
Mm-hmm.
and what they had been doing, and so much had been taken out of Russia and sold to private and in Ukraine and other places. It's different now. Now it's more under control.
Mm-hmm.
But you can imagine in the wartime things.
Just get done. Yeah, it just gets everywhere, and then you just lose all that, right? That culture, that history, that knowledge just goes away. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Paul, thank you so much, so very much for meeting with me, man. I mean, this is amazing. I've been seriously, every video you pop out, I watch it 2 or 3 times. Everything you write, I read.
thank you.
I'm so excited that I got a chance to meet you and talk to you about all this stuff. Of course, I'm going to put all your links down below, everywhere to find you. Go find Paul, read his books,
Thank you.
subscribe to his YouTube channel, help him out, hit the Patreon if you can, do all this stuff that you can because the guy deserves it. Like, you got anything on the horizon? You working on something massive right now that's going on? What do you got going on?
Well, just a few research areas that I want to continue getting into. Siberia, you can see prominently that I have a number of videos. I'm trying to bring up more about Siberia and some of the inventions that had been done in the Soviet Union, but don't have enough light to them.
Right.
And Central Asia, mostly.
That's awesome. Well, I want to do this again because we didn't go anywhere near the psychic phenomenon. We didn't go anywhere near mind control. We didn't go anywhere near any of the that was massive out of Russia. That from the documents and from their videos, I've learned that this is a real thing. Time travel, that whole
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
that thing. All of the researchers, all of the Russian and Soviet scientists that have gone down that path and had verifiable evidence with documentation, and you have it all, and you have it on your channel, and it's just what's the mirror called? Is the I'm gonna mess it up. It starts with a K. The Kevlar. It's a mirror that's in a circle. That's supposedly
Kazarova, Kazarov mirror, yes.
Kazarov mirror is amazing that nobody knows anything about. That supposedly
Yeah.
a device that can allow you to travel time, right?
Let me add quickly something.
Yeah.
Vadim Chernobrov, who was the one of the most forceful researchers he died young in Russia,
Mhm.
Cosmopoisk. He was doing his own time travel experiments, and we'll talk about it
Yeah.
to the extent possible. He wanted me to help him get in touch with Kip Thorne, I believe, a scientist.
Kip Thorne. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a bright guy, but there is also more about even historical time um, distortions
Hmm.
cases, and we can talk maybe sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you,
Part two is going to come up. We're going to talk about all that stuff. Paul, thank you so much, man. It's been an honor. I really appreciate it.
thank you for inviting me. Have a good night. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you.